Thanks. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm a software developer for more than 30 years. Actually, I started when I was 8 years old, when my computer had more or less the same amount of memory that blockchain have today. So it's pretty interesting being a software developer, old-fashioned software developer, looking for all these things that is happening in the Web3 space and the existence of Bitcoin, and remembers me when I was a child and was programming without internet in my personal computer. And I've been working with software for a long time in different companies, and then 2 years ago I decided to go full crypto, and I'm really passionate about it. So we founded a community here in Brazil, community of developers, Web3 devs, and we want more people to come and learn and build this future together with us.
Hello everybody, I'm Guilherme. I'm co-founder and architect for the PODs protocol. So yeah, I mean, to say briefly, like basically PODs is strategies around options. So yeah, it's been a long journey since I started developing, and like I'm with PODs like the past 3 years, and yeah, like been many of you might have seen my face around the conferences and hackathons, and yeah, I've been hacking and playing with Solidity ever since this introduced.
Hello, my name is Matheus. I'm currently working on the Solidity compiler and language design. I was a teacher before. I was a teacher for 8 years, and back in 2014 or 13, I guess, I read the Satoshi paper about Bitcoin and everything and blockchain. And yeah, I got interested, and I thought that it was a really nice solution to decentralize, so you don't need centralized authority. But yeah, that was it for me at the time. And as I said, I was a teacher. But then I wanted to go back to the industry and work with new technologies and challenge myself. So I started looking for jobs in the industry, and there was this open job at the compiler. And then I said, yeah, I mean, it's a compiler, it's in C++, I have experience with that. I have the background to work with that, so I think it's gonna be fun. And then I basically like parachuted into the crypto space, and I mean, I'm just like learning lots of things in the past year since I began working with Ethereum and the crypto space. And there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to dive into, but I'm really enjoying. I think that crypto has a great community, great ideas, great philosophy, and I really think that this is going to be the technology of our future.
Quite nice, yeah. So for me as well, so I'm JG, everybody calls me JG. I'm also a Solidity developer at Maple Finance, it's a DeFi protocol. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. So my next question is for you guys, and how was your journey learning Solidity, both of you as the language itself, and Matheus maybe as like, how did you actually approach learning about the compiler and how the language works? So how was your experience kind of getting into the language in these past years?
I would say that was the worst experience that person can have joined an ecosystem, as most Solidity developers have. Yeah, I was working for a fintech as CTO, and I was looking for something new to change the way the company was doing student loans, and I wanted to do something different from what they're doing. So I started to look at DeFi and say, oh, DeFi, smart contracts, what is this? And started to research, and I need to learn this. This is something that maybe it's what I'm looking for. And I went to Coursera because I tried to search the web for courses. I didn't find anything. The documentation was completely very, very specific and technical. It wasn't for onboarding anyone. So I went to Coursera, which is a platform that I usually have great courses. I started to do this Coursera Solidity course, which is really terrible as well. Well, I saw an opportunity there. I said, no, there must be a way to learn this, and there must be something different. And I fell in love with crypto. Because I saw all the ecosystem, everything that was happening, DeFi and gaming and blockchains and things happening in Ethereum, but the development part was kind of difficult to learn. I spent some time learning about different blockchains. I studied Cardano, Polkadot, and I couldn't understand anything. And I'm a 20-year-old developer, very experienced with Ruby on Rails. I worked with Ruby, with JavaScript, with Java, with Visual Basic, whatever. So it was kind of a different world and difficult even for an experienced person. So, and then I came to know BuildSpace. I don't know how many of you know BuildSpace, which is an amazing platform, an amazing idea that they created this kind of project where you develop a project and you learn how to build a simple thing using Solidity, but doing something practical and doing something that actually you learn. You learn by doing, not just by reading documentations and whatever. So I did the first boot camp using the BuildSpace platform and said, this is amazing. We must have this in Brazil. So we decided and then I started to join other developers, and everybody had the same experience. And then I met Jan, the guy there, and he had a Solidity channel on YouTube and was very didactic, explaining the concepts. And then we joined together and said, let's create a community. Let's start to learn together, because it's very difficult to learn alone here. So the learning experience for developers on Web3 for me was a change for my life, because I just left. I decided to leave the fintech that I was working for and help the community to learn what I thought was a very difficult experience, but hopefully we are trying to make it better. And right now, I don't call myself a specialist on Solidity, but I learned a lot during the last 2 years since I started to study, and I would say that it's a long journey. Learning a programming language, usually it's a long journey, because you never stop, because the language changes. Maybe Solidity won't be here in 5 years. There will be another technology. So we still need to keep creating educational courses and keep making things practical and useful for people to actually build something and evolve these products with the existing languages or with whatever comes next.
Well, when I first started using Solidity, I came from this background of being a front-end developer. So I was hired as R&D for a DeFi company. It wasn't called DeFi back then, but like the cool thing when I started using Solidity myself was that as a front-end developer, I knew how to connect with a smart contract. That was my job. Like I used to research like protocols and see how they work and try to make like new front ends for these protocols or better front ends. And yeah, I mean, I knew how to read it, the code, but I never actually, like back then, I never actually programmed any smart contract. Like, I never had deployed any smart contract. And then one day I said, like, yeah, I'll just do it. Like I'll make a silly contract and see how this deployment works. And my first smart contract actually was the Nigerian prince scam that you receive on your email. Like I tried to replicate that. Like, oh, let's make this smart contract where that says deposit here because like I need just to get the prince out of the jail, this type of stuff. And then like when you send, you get scammed. Like this, like all I can say is that in my journey I had much fun. So yeah, I mean. Since then, like obviously, as I've been doing more serious smart contracts now, but yeah, on my side, I can say I only had fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working in the compiler, so basically, I mostly see Solidity code that other people code, right? Yeah, I mean. To work in the compiler, first I had to understand the language, like what is the syntax of the language and how it works generically. So yeah, I just like read the docs, the official docs of the language, and tried some simple examples. And then, like in compilers, we have front end and back end, which is different from what usually is. Because the front end is the part that understands or parse the language, and then there's the back end, which like transforms this understanding of the language of what you wrote into the actual bytecode that runs on the EVM. So there's these two parts, and I mean, it's like it's better for you to go like first through the front end. Then you get to the back end where like the hard stuff is being done. So yeah, I mean, I'm just working that road. I mostly work on the compiler on the front end, which is like parsing things, syntactic analysis. Like this is a keyword. For example, you can have a variable named for or while, right? Because these are keywords of the language. This is the kind of stuff that happens on the parser or the front end of the compiler. And then the more complicated stuff happens in the back end, which is where the code is generated, and we have the optimizations happening there. So that's a lot more complicated and demands a lot more of study and understanding of the compiler to really get into it. But I've done some few small PRs in that part of the compiler. So yeah, I mean, that's been my journey. And for me, it's been really interesting because at the same time, I got to learn Solidity and also work on the compiler and getting to know what's gonna happen in the EVM level. So it's like, although it's sometimes overwhelming, it's really nice to have like this picture of the full, let's say, process line of the thing, like you start in Solidity and then end up in the bytecode in the EVM. So I mean, I like that kind of stuff, like to study and to work on hard stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's been great. I need to learn more about Solidity, like as a true dev. But yeah, we're working on that, like planning to work on some projects in Solidity. I've met some great people here that maybe I can collaborate with and learn and not more be a noob in Solidity. But yeah, it's been very fun.
How many of you here are developers? Just for me to understand the audience. Okay, half developers, half non-developers. It's really interesting to meet Guilherme, because probably those who write Solidity code have a knowledge of a completely different domain of what Guilherme has, Matheus, sorry, because I read Guilherme, you're inverted, you're checking me. That Matheus works on his daily life, because he basically his knowledge is much more on low-level machine communication, which is memory management and processor management and things like that. Then probably he knows less Solidity than most of the Solidity developers.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I only know the basics of the language and the syntax, right? But I mean, I'm sure that probably lots of Solidity devs know more, because, for example, when I work in the compiler, I'm not really worried about, like, for example, gas, right? I mean, in the sense, my code, right? I'm worried about, like, oh, your code must, but I mean, usually I'm not worried about that, especially when we're working on the front-end part, right, on the parser, where we're not generating anything that consumes gas yet. We're just checking if what you wrote is right. So there's no gas considerations there. So, I mean, and that's a huge part or a core concern of Solidity devs. And so yeah, usually, sometimes, most of the time, I'm not dealing with that in my daily work. But yeah, so that's why I said that I want to, like, get hands-on on a Solidity project, because then surely I will have to deal with those problems. Like, oh, I can do this because it's gonna cost a lot of gas, so I gotta find another way. And then you start to, like, really know or really understand the language on that level.
Yeah, very good. That makes total sense. Like Daniel said, the knowledge of compiler and optimizer specifically is very limited to a few people, especially Solidity, among, like, Solidity developers. So it's interesting to have this perspective. And my next question is more for, like, Daniel and Guilherme, which is, like, what is your, like, stack looks like nowadays? Like, what is your daily use of Solidity? Like, if you're starting a new project, what sort of, like, tool you use, what kind of, like, approach you use? Just tell us about that. Like, how do you approach a new project or your existing project?
You wanna go first?
Sure. Like, I started using, like, nowadays we still use Hardhat. Like, I think it's mature, like, has a lot of plugins and just works. But I understand that, for example, if you're, especially, like, if you're looking in the point of view of a company, like, if you're trying to train new developers, it's easier for you to just like, just tell them to use Foundry, because, like, you just have to learn one language, and, like, this person knowing, getting new knowledge, it will be start working on the contracts earlier. Instead, if you go the hard hat way, like, you have to, like, handle this hassle that is using, like, two languages, like maybe TypeScript and Solidity, or JavaScript and Solidity. But yeah, I mean, I still use hard hat. Like, I'm considering switching to Foundry, but yeah, it's just for time constraints. Like, it's not a priority for us, like, changing all the stack right now. But yeah, I really like Foundry, like the way it's done, like, and it's more. I can say that it is more productive in the sense, like, if you're teaching, like, new devs, I think they will get start to work and be productive faster.
When I started, I used to use Remix, because Remix is really interesting for those who don't know anything and you don't need to install any software on your machine. You can run everything, all the code online in a platform. So it's really interesting to onboard people. But as you proceed and start developing more, you see that Remix has the same issues that helps you when you start, makes you less productive when you are working more. So then I came to know Hardhat, and today I use much more Hardhat to create the template. For those who don't know Hardhat, basically it creates the skeleton of all the infrastructure that you need to create your smart contract. Because Solidity, you usually have .sol files that are the smart contracts that you compile and run in the blockchains, and then you have to create ways to test your contract to make sure everything is happening all right. And you don't write tests on Solidity. You have to use another language like JavaScript or Rust or another framework to run your code into the because this once you have the contract deployed into a local blockchain, you create a local blockchain, and then you deploy the contract into the blockchain, and then you start testing it. And this is something really difficult to do by hand, because you have to run the node and then you have to deploy the contract. So it's really interesting to have something that does everything for you, and you just write the test coding using JavaScript. So Hardhat is much better tooling for testing. And this is what I use usually for smart contract. But I would say that developers generally, myself at least, I'm very full stack, so I don't write code only for Solidity or only for smart contracts. Usually I have to write code for the whole application, front end, sometimes even ordinary Web 2 backend, connecting to databases or things like that. So usually I use the Visual Studio editor and use other frameworks like Next.js or React or other stuff to create the other parts of an application that is needed to create a full Web3 experience.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. I personally work full-time with Solidity. I don't use Hardhat. I'm a Foundry guy. I used to use DevTools. I'm not even sure if you guys know what DevTools is. It used to be supported by MakerDAO, Maker Foundation, and it's what came before Foundry. Do any of you guys know Foundry at all? Oh, very few people. Okay. So Foundry is a super. Do you know Hardhat? Or Truffle? Yeah. Okay. So Foundry is like you thought a bit about, but it's just like Hardhat, which sets the whole infrastructure for you to test your smart contract, but with the benefit that you just use Solidity. So you write tests in Solidity, you write scripts in Solidity, you write deployment scripts in Solidity. Everything is pure Solidity, which is a different perspective than most like Hardhat and Truffle guys, because yeah, there's a lot less context switching between like Solidity and JavaScript, so I find it quite nice. And I guess my next question is more for Matheus, which touches on the point of like security, because like it is a kind of sensitive point for all Solidity developers, and we kind of end up putting a lot of work on doing audits and tests to make sure all Solidity code works. But one thing very few people kind of get it is that we all trust the compiler to actually work properly, both the compiler and the optimizer. So my question is like, how do you guys in the Solidity team actually make sure they test the compiler and make sure it works properly? Because it's quite remarkable that like we have very few bugs with the compiler overall, like that cause major problems. So like in this past like 5 years, it's been working quite well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the team that worked and was already working in Solidity in the past years are like they are really good guys, technical wise. So, and they're really compromised with the security and the correctness of the compiler. So, like, even after we merge PRs, we still review them after, just to make sure that even after it was merged, just to catch something that maybe passed through the reviews and then being merged. And there were some cases that, a few cases that happened in the past that they were able to catch some minor bugs or things that were actually merged. But I mean, this is not after going release, it's before. So yeah, people have like this huge concern about this, like, because the whole ecosystem or a great part of it is dependent on Solidity. So yeah, we got that. And also we have like lots of tools. One thing that I find interesting that Solidity, that we do in the project is that we have like, we have lots of repositories from other projects, like for example, OpenZeppelin, ENS, I don't know, lots of other things, Chainlink. We have a test suite that just downloads these repositories and compiles all the files, right? So we are actually like trying to test the compiler on Solidity code that's written by other people. So we don't get any bias or we don't lack any like use case. And also another really, I guess, strong point or like a great tool that we have, which is like owned and like the code sense, right, owned by Bagava, which is a guy that works in the compiler, is the fuzzer. So for you guys that don't know, a fuzzer is basically like a program that generates random but still valid Solidity code. So it's just like maybe like a parrot that's parroting like Solidity code, but it's all valid. So it generates like lots and lots of different code in Solidity, and then it compiles against. And this tool actually finds lots of bugs, right? Because it just generates like millions of possibilities of code that can be written. So it's like a brute force approach.
We can also use ChatGPT for that right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I trust more in the fuzzer than the ChatGPT, but okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of a similar concept, right? ChatGPT is just like completing text based on statistical things, but yeah, another discussion. But yeah, like I guess these two like points are like the strongest points of the Solidity compiler project regarding testing, like testing against code written by other people, lots of other projects, big projects, and also having the fuzzer generating like crazy things that maybe no one would think to write, but because it's a random machine program, it just generates every possibility or almost every possibility, and then we can check if the compiler is doing the right thing there. And as I said, this tool filters lots of bugs. We catch lots of bugs there.
Nice, nice. And so sort of like, let's get into sort of a bit of a rant mode. And now, like each of you to just like tell a little bit about the stuff of Solidity that you kind of don't like, that you wish were different. You two on the perspective of writing the language itself, and maybe Matheus in the perspective of like what the design that went wrong, that what we would change at this point, or even how the compiler works. Just yeah, it's time to just rant a little bit about what things annoy you in Solidity.
Well, I started programming in a language called BASIC in 1987. Greg as well. And so I passed through different languages. So for me, it's kind of difficult to, I'm not or someone that is learning a language for the first time. So every time I see a language, I always compare it with all the past languages that I learned in the past. And the more languages you know, the more flaws and problems you find on the new language, because you have different references and say. And one thing that I don't like about Solidity is that it is very error prone. So it's so open, and you are dealing with very important stuff like people's money. And the way the language was designed, like same for JavaScript, so similar to JavaScript, a general purpose language in a way that you can't easily check that that code won't break, that thing is actually doing what needs to be done, and nobody can attack that. And the way the language was designed makes you have a lot of work on not writing your code, but thinking about all the problems and all the attack vectors that exist there, and then you become specialist on that. And I would say that if this language was designed differently, maybe you wouldn't need that much work for writing code or thinking about the business logic, and you would just think about your own business instead of thinking about all the insides of the language and the potential problems that we have. So this is the worst thing about Solidity. And the worst thing is the best thing, because Solidity is this way, it's really easy for one to start, because same for JavaScript. You can do crappy things like, and for web developers that start with PHP, which is a very easy to learn language, or Python, they are so open. So you can easily start and create something that runs and works. So it's very good to onboard people, but very good to make these onboarded people to do very crappy things and break things easily. And so this is the good and the bad side of Solidity, in my opinion.
How to complain about Solidity in one single phrase? Stack too deep.
Just use
I bet
via air.
Yeah, like I have not run into stack too deep anymore. Like, but yeah, for some in the past, like I used to see this error more often. But like yeah, I think I can't say much. Like the only thing that I think eventually the Solidity, like the compiler, has to add is that, like, often you see those optimizations, especially written in assembly, which like auditors usually when they see the assembly keyword in your code, like they will take a special look into that specific section, because you might be doing something like
You're hiding
terrible.
something.
Yeah, exactly. Like
The developer is hiding something that I don't understand.
and even it can cost you more on your audit, just because like you use assembly more often. So what I wanted to see in the future, like, and eventually I think it's going to be implemented, it's all those optimizations that people use, like for example using payable at the constructor, because like payable reduces memory load. I think it's storage load. Was that I
don't know this one.
But yeah, it basically reduces gas, like using the keyword payable, because like how it works internally. So all those optimizations, like this crazy stuff that you generally see inside like assembly brackets, like those got to be merged inside the language, and yeah, I mean, we should. If you look at the C compiler, like a lot of stuff, like yeah, I'm not trying to compare like a 60-year-old compiler, but yeah, there's a lot of lesson learned on the C compiler that we can actually move to Solidity compiler and try to make this like for example, don't make the dev like the dev should not be make this optimization, like all these optimizations have to be done in the compiler, because eventually like the users of the language will not be someone that like has this compiler knowledge and know how to how it works, the inner workings of the language. So yeah, I think this is my biggest complaint. Like we should as a community get rid of all these optimizations.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like Daniel said, it's like it's a trade-off, right? You have to gain something, you have to lose, or to be disadvantageous at others. And yeah, I mean, in the team we're really open to like listening to user feedback. Like we are really open to having people talking to us in the forum, proposing things, like filing issues in the GitHub project. Also, our meetings, we have meetings Mondays and Wednesdays. They're open for anyone to join. So really want to get that feedback from users, and we really welcome that. And the thing, I guess that one of the hardest things to do when you're like designing Solidity and writing the compiler is the thing about like gas and how that interacts, like, because you can, like, for example, you can have in your contract some external call to another contract that then you just don't know what's gonna happen there. And I mean, you have lots of things that happen and they're like critical, because we're talking about gas, which is like money. So I mean, maybe if you're programming something and you say, oh, I could do this other thing and that would save me 1 bit, you would say, nah, I'm not gonna do that. But if you say, oh, it's gonna save 1 gas, well, yeah, maybe I'm gonna do that because this 1 gas is money, and then over like thousands of iterations, it's gonna be like big money. So yeah, and that's why people asked for the assembly team. Like there was a discussion in the team back then. I wasn't a part, but I know this. Like people were like, we don't know if we should do this, should allow people to do the assembly team. But yeah, people asked because exactly about this, because they want to do their optimizations. And like Solidity is still like a fairly new language, and the EVM is also changing, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's something. But language-wise, I would say that there are a lot of things that we want to fix or redo. We have a roadmap where we have laid down what are the things we're going to do. You can check it out on the GitHub project page. And I guess that 1.0, the version 1.0 of the compiler, will have like generics and a standard library, which will hopefully make it easier for people to get these things they want, because then we're not gonna have to worry about so much things. We're gonna focus on the core of the compiler, and lots of other stuff that we do today is gonna be moved to the standard library. It's gonna be written in Solidity, so it's not gonna be a concern of the compiler. And then I guess that's gonna like be something that will fix and reshape lots of these pointy aspects of the language.
One thing interesting that you say, Matheus, that about gas, which sometimes people don't realize, when you develop software in the 60s or the 70s, you had to worry about gas. because gas was actually CPU cycles or memory that you had very limited resources. In some way, actually, gas is telling people we have limited resources. We have to worry about the resources that we have and the resources that we consume while we were processing anything. And this should be something that all developers should have in mind, independently for if you are developing for Solidity or because usually developers that were born in the 2000 the millennials that started to learn JavaScript in the last 10 years, they don't have to worry about memory or CPU cycles because there's plenty available. We were talking back there before. You just ship an app with 1 gig of storage, and that's fine because the devices today they have this. But if you want to have you will always have these restrictions of resources because resources in the world, they are limited. So in some way, it's something interesting for me, having to think about gas is not a flaw, it's a feature of making people think about what you're doing actually, instead of just writing any code and run, because if you run this code, you're gonna spend $1 million because it's just impractical.
Nice. I agree with that actually. I like the gas constraint overall. I think it makes developers very conscious of what they are doing. I guess we have time for a final question, which is, what do you want to see in Solidity? Like, what's your wish list? What are the things you are looking forward the most for the next versions that you can comment on?
Okay, let me start. Yeah, I guess that's what I said before about the roadmap is generics. When we have generics, I guess that the language is going to be much more powerful, and it's going to be much more easier than solve those problems that we have today.
Yeah, I think default parameters for functions, like default values for function arguments, would be a great add. Like we have that in Viper, so yeah. I mean, but I don't know the technicalities of implementing this. I don't know if we can read from the cow data or I think Viper duplicates the function. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, would be a nice increment.
I remember when I was working with Java in 2006, and Java was one of the first well-known object-oriented programming languages. And then I moved to Ruby, from Java to Ruby, and it was a complete game-changing because it was a very Ruby. It's very productive, and you don't have to write all those crappy things to do something simple. And I remember that everybody in the Java community started to look at what Ruby or other modern languages were doing, and let's put this in Java. And I remember when they started to think about how to add some functional programming concepts into the Java language. And I would say that the functional programming paradigm should be in some way, in some moment, should be added to the Solidity language, because the procedural paradigm is easy for you to learn, to start, but it's, as I told in the beginning, it's more difficult for you to prove and to create and to isolate your processing from your I/O and things that change state. So if Solidity had something, and this is more a dream, not just something practical like, let's add default values for parameters, because this is very doable and things that you can do, but more like a dream, to add to Solidity some elements that you can check, formally check that the code is actually doing what it's supposed